It's no longer news that the cost of doing business in Nigeria today is on the steady rise, given the inflationary pressures that has been on the economy for several consecutive months now. Small and medium-scale enterprises, commonly known as SMEs, are responsible for more than two-thirds of all the jobs worldwide. They also account for majority of new job creations. How are they surviving amidst this harsh operating business environment? Well, let me get to understand this better, and of course our viewers too. And to do this for us, the Managing Director and Chief Business Officer, Optimus by AfriInvest, Mr. Ayodeji Ebo. Mr. Ebo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. It's good to have you on the program. Mr. Ebo, can you hear me? Let's start this discussion around the rising cost of doing business and the harsh operating environment. How, in your thoughts, do you think small businesses can survive at this time? Some of them already have projections. They put pen to paper and had projections before now.
Okay, thanks. And would say it's really going to be a tough one, and there's no silver bullet to this. Each businesses vary. What they also do vary in terms of the demand. So when you look at it in the market, you have to first ascertain, is it price elastic or pricing elastic, which means that if you increase the price of your goods, will there be a corresponding change in terms of reduction in the demand, or other way around, if you also increase it, if there's no substitute to what you do. So it's really going to now vary for business to businesses. So this is the time to come back to the drawing board. It's the time for businesses not to play the ostrich. They need to put things down and see if there are places where they can optimize their costs. I would say optimization because cost cutting sometimes also has its implication on revenue. So there's a limit to how you say you can cut costs. There's a limit to how you can downsize. And so which may begin to impact even the revenue that you are even making. So it's the time to re-strategize in light of this new development of higher prices. And I believe that once they look at some of the line items and see whether there are things they can do without. So for instance, companies now, if you know that staff you can put a structure in place where staff work from home. You may not need to run Gen entirely from morning till night, or that can also reduce your cost. Or maybe you are using a petrol gen. Do you want to switch to a more cost-effective of using other renewable energy? These are the time to begin to look at that. It may require some initial cost or initial cash, but when you also look at what will be the payback period, that means when will you recoup whatever you are trying to invest now based on the savings you'll be making. So this is the time to continue to engage. But beyond that, when you look at your cost and you see that there's a limit to how you can bring that down, then that means that focus should not change to revenue. How can you increase your business revenue? How can you come up with other products that you would be able to sell more? How can you increase your scope in terms of the market that you currently serve? All these things, yes, may not come very easy because they will also require funding. But these are the times where there is a need to begin to be deliberate, looking at it, such that if at the end of the year you are not, you will not be in a negative position. And even if you are going to be in a negative position, it should not take you by surprise because you have carefully planned your cash flow or you have planned your cost and revenue.
It's a good one. Electricity supply is something that small businesses grapple with. Let me take you a little bit away, but I know it's an interesting one. Just a few hours ago, President Tinubu signed the Electricity Act 2023 into law. And what I'm holding on in this is demonopolizing, you understand, the monopoly in that sector, staying just with the federal. Now, states can now generate power. This has been on for some time, but now it's been signed into law. With your knowledge around this, what are the positives around this for all businesses, of course, including small ones?
Okay, thank you. I think this is really a very positive one for that sector. And some of the positive that I see there is we'll begin to see different embedded power being generated or captive power being generated across the. So currently we have it currently in some major locations, but now that it's also been signed into law, and I think the cap is you are able to build a plant if it's not above 1 megawatt, if I'm correct, based on what I read not long. That would really impact will really impact on the revenue. So I believe that it's really going to be a positive one that it's the electricity bill has now been so we'll see private sector coming into that space. That's monopoly that it's only the transmission company that can, you have to generate, take it back to transmission before you distribute. That would have now been taken care of. So I see this is opening up more opportunities for businesses or investments within that space, which eventually will also generate jobs. And we believe that that would also help our generation faster, our distribution faster. So once you know that you have the ability, you look at a particular area, you generate the power, looking at the sources, if you're in the north, is it wind vane that you want to use? Or if you want to use gas, taking gas to that space, if you are within the south and you know maybe you have enough water, is it hydro? So I believe that that would really help. And as a result, when distribution is also increasing, efficiency will also set in, and we'll begin to see whether there may be a bit of drop in the power. We also expect that we'll begin to see that cost reflective tariff now, just like we're already seeing it on for the fuel. So Nigerians also need to raise up for also higher electricity tariff because I'm not sure this government will be willing to subsidize also electricity for Nigerians.
Thank you so much for helping us understand that better. Well, back to SMEs. We see that the tech space is also getting so very busy. A lot of activities around that space, a lot of small businesses and creative guys taking advantage of that space. Now, what do you think? What challenge do you see as we move back to pre-COVID levels? Some are saying people might go back to norms and stop all of these Zoom meetings and some of that. What are you emphasizing around small businesses to enable them still sustain growth at this time?
Okay, thank you. So I think that looking at the pre-COVID level, trying to take the demand to that level, there's a need for on the government side that we also need to provide that support. So for instance, in terms of the taxes within that space, can it be reduced or given a bit of relief, given the sudden surge in prices of commodities? So that can be a bit of relief. And if they also look at businesses, some of these savings, like we'll always clamor, if they set up a fund, SMEs account for over 50% of employment. And when you look at the informal sector, it's about 80%. So can you also use part of the savings from this subsidy to fund some of the businesses that are, you can see the traction based on the records they are keeping, and you put control in place. So that can also help them expand and increase the ability to be able to sustain the businesses they are doing. Because if we are not also very careful, most of these businesses, if they so go under, it will increase unemployment. And you looking at the relation between unemployment and insecurity, that can also impact on insecurity, because beyond just throwing money to solve insecurity problem, you need to also create the jobs that would be able to reduce people from going into very dangerous ventures.
Now, definitely the monetary side has a role to play here, and of the fiscal side. I'm looking at possible economic policies that could help rev up, the proceeds or gains made by these small businesses. Now, what do you think should be some of those things that government should look at that would enable small businesses now in focus? Subsidy is gone, like you alluded to. Fuel is selling at about 470, 80, 90, and 500 in some cases. And some of them would definitely have to invest in buying fuel. So, what are you thinking that what more can be done to support businesses, to make the environment more conducive? We had the ease of doing business initiative, but I don't know, you tell us how well that has impacted the sector.
Okay, thanks. So I think beyond the taxes that I mentioned, uh, there's also the possibility that government can, if we see if power is also stable, it means that the source of energy to them will be cheaper relative to petrol. Also, investing those savings in infrastructure. We pay for a lot of inefficiencies. If we can have a rail system that bring things cheap from the north to the south or south to the east, that will also reduce the cost of items, and that would increase purchasing power, naturally increase the purchasing power of goods, because if those prices come down, it means that there will be higher demand, and that will also help them to produce more, because once there's demand, then there will be need to produce more, which producing more will mean that we are generating more jobs. So I feel in the interim, it's the taxes that we feel that stepping down, reducing the taxes for the small businesses, because it may help them to retain more. And if there can be improvement in power supply, that can help. And if there's also, for those that have a bit of structure, funding, and if there can be a bit of funding for them at very cheap rates, that would help. But in the long term, it's tackling policies around the infrastructure bottlenecks that would reduce some of the inefficiencies that we are paying for as Nigerians.
Let you go, Mr. Ayo Dejebo. Let's look at SMEs in the agricultural space. There's a lot of talks around tech and also agriculture. So, in your thoughts, are we taking advantage of the agricultural space using technology? In your assessment, for all of the small techie guys that are able to use technology to access markets and, of course, the agricultural value chain?
Okay, I would say that there's still a lot to be done within that space. But first of all, for that sector to thrive, there's a need to take care of insecurity within the space. Yes, using technology to increase productivity is very good. But with Nigeria, when you look at, we already have the land. For all countries that are trying to also use technology to drive based on improvement in seedlings, or they use some of this new technology to farm, that would really that may help or be more efficient in those areas. But for us, it's we already have that land. So if we tackle insecurity, we believe that production will also increase, while we're also improving on those seedlings, and the little we also harvest, how are we able to preserve them? And then that would translate, if we're able to preserve them well, the fluctuation that we see, seasonal fluctuation in prices, would also be minimized.
Now, let's wrap up doing a little bit of a projection for the outlook. With the subsidy removal and, of course, increase in price, many believe that inflation will continue to be on the high side. The monetary policy have said they will continue to increase rates to rein in inflation. What do you think what kind of inflation figures are we going to continue to see? That's one. And if we look at our economic growth projections, which has been reprojected and reevaluated, what do you think we could end the year with, considering the reality on ground?
Okay, so if I'm going to speak in terms of projecting for June, because we don't expect any impact in May, looking between 28 and 30%, and we'll begin to see a slowdown from that. So we may peak at that 20-30% for June because of the shock. But we'll see that prices may begin to, that's even petrol prices may moderate, except we see any major shock at the international market and prices increase. So that would impact. On the average, we may not close less than 25% inflation this year. And for the GDP growth rate, I feel that would still be positive. We may still be able to achieve that 3%, given some of the confidence that we're seeing. If this is sustained in terms of the trajectory that we're seeing now, even for banks lending, they will have confidence to lend more because business opportunities will open up. If we see the unification of the exchange rates, that will also help foreign investors to begin to reconsider Nigeria, and that will also help for business opportunities in the country. So that may be a major boost for GDP for the rest of the year. Thank you.
It's always interesting having you speak with us, Mr. Ayodeji Ebo. He's the Managing Director and Chief Business Officer, CBO, at Optimus by AfriInvest. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Always my pleasure.